This is Casey's Top 40. I'm Casey Kasem. Now we're up to the current hit for a rock star who regularly appears on lists of the top 10 sexiest men in the world. But he says he can't figure it all out. For the past 5 years, along with heartthrobs like Mel Gibson and Tom Cruise, George Michael has been a standard on any listing of male sex symbols. His pouty lips, his 3-day stubble, his tight jeans, and his Elvis-like stance all make him a prime candidate for the sexy top 10. And yet George says he hasn't got any idea what the fuss is all about. For years, he wasn't used to getting that kind of attention from the opposite sex. When he was in school, one of the reasons he got together with his Wham partner, Andrew Ridgeley, was because Andrew was popular with girls, while George couldn't get noticed. George says, quote, "I had no reason to be confident of my looks. I had glasses, I was overweight, my eyebrows naturally meet in the middle. I still have the feeling inside that I look like a nerd. I don't think I'm very good looking at all." Well, George Michael may still see himself as a nerd, but his fans don't agree. As far as they're concerned, the only thing they love more than his looks is his music. And this week, George's fans have helped make his latest hit survey song number 22 on Casey's Top 40. Here's Waitin' for That Day.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. These are the nation's biggest hits by the world's hottest stars. Hopping aboard at number 32 is the man recently honored by ASCAP with one of songwriting's biggest awards. It's called the Golden Note Award, and winners over the years have included Bob Dylan and Stevie Wonder. At age 28, this man is the youngest composer ever to receive the Golden Note Award. Here's George Michael with one of his latest compositions, Too Funky.
Casey's biggest hits.
5 years ago this week, one of the biggest hits in the USA was Father Figure by a superstar who says he won't do something unless he can do it himself. This multi-talented British singer-songwriter says he'd rather do fewer things by himself than have others control the creative aspects of his career. He says that he actually writes very few songs. That's because every one of them is very personal to him. And when he goes into the studio, he's both the singer and producer. He designs his album covers, and when it comes time to make his videos, he's his own director.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. Well, now we're up to the song Somebody to Love, the latest hit for a British superstar who learned to sing in Greek before he learned to sing in English. You see, he was born Georgios Kyriacos Panayiotou. His parents had moved from Greece to London shortly before he was born. And like a lot of Greek immigrants, they went into business, opening a small restaurant that captured the spirit of the tavernas in their homeland. In their home, Greek was the language spoken, and that was the first language Georgios learned to speak. The first songs he learned to sing were also in Greek, and as he grew up, he sang them to entertain the customers in his family's restaurant. He eventually learned English, both on the streets of London and in school. But Georgios says that to this day, he hasn't forgotten his first language, and whenever he speaks with his parents, it's still in Greek. Even though he's now a rock superstar, he still loves the Greek melodies of his youth, and he says someday he may open his own Greek restaurant where he can sing those songs for the people who come in to dine. Meanwhile, he's singing in English, not for a small crowd in a restaurant, but for millions of fans around the world. This is a song he sang for a lot of those fans last year at London's Wembley Stadium, a song on which he's backed by the group Queen. Jumping 10 big notches to number 26 this week on Casey's Top 40, here's Georgios Panayiotou, the man who now calls himself George Michael, with Somebody to Love.
Casey's Top 40.
Well, now we're up to the song Somebody to Love. It's by a superstar who says he was on the road to ruin, drinking and drugging, until he woke up one morning, opened his mouth to talk, and nothing came out. George Michael says that at one point in his life, too much was rarely enough. He'd always gone overboard, doing too much of everything that was offered to him. And for a long time, that meant drinking and doing drugs until he passed out. George says he passed out in restaurants, in nightclubs, at people's houses, and it was never a pretty sight. But he figured getting high was what life was all about. And anyway, he was young and strong. His body could stand it. So even though friends suggested he cool it, George just kept on living his life in the fast lane. Then one morning in the mid-'80s, he woke up feeling especially abused. He opened his mouth to say something and found he couldn't talk. He rushed to a doctor who told the superstar singer that he was on the verge of destroying his vocal cords because of all his substance abuse. The alcohol in particular was burning the delicate membranes in his throat to a crisp. Well, luckily for George Michael, he was smart enough to read the handwriting on the wall. And so he got his life together and stopped drinking and taking drugs. In his new sobriety, this English singer-songwriter took on a whole new attitude, a more wholesome, serious attitude. And these days, he's healthier than ever, physically, mentally, and musically. Now, here's a song he performed live with the band Queen at the tribute concert for Freddie Mercury last year.
Casey's biggest hit.
11 years ago this week, back in 1985, one of the biggest hits in the USA was by the very first Western pop group to perform live in China. Until 1985, the only way rock music was heard in the People's Republic of China was on black market cassette tapes. Then, after more than a year of negotiations, the duo called Wham was given permission to perform at the 10,000-seat Workers' Gymnasium in Beijing. They performed for a sold-out house at the most talked-about event of the year in China. They also filmed their journey to China, on-the-road footage which they turned into a video for one of their hits.
American Top 20.
Well, now we're up to an American Top 20 extra by George Michael, a rocker who's in a new TV series, a series where he plays a rock and roll angel. Eli Stone recently premiered on ABC TV. It's about an unethical lawyer who discovers he has a guardian angel. The angel is played by George Michael. But he's not the sort of angel who wears white robes and has wings. He's dressed like, well, George Michael, which is a first for a TV angel. George says, quote, "I wasn't that interested until they told me that each episode would be named after one of my songs. I thought that was brilliant. I couldn't say no." With an extra, here's George Michael with a smash from 1987, a song with a title that's just perfect for Eli Stone, Faith.
Well, I guess it would be nice if I could touch your body. I know not everybody has got a body like you.
Counting down the hits with Casey Kasem.
Well, now we're up to an American Top 20 extra by George Michael, a superstar who's gone into deep therapy. Not with a therapist, but with a laptop. Last year, after months of negotiations, George Michael signed a multi-million-dollar contract. The contract wasn't with the record company. It was with the book publisher, HarperCollins. George says, "I agreed to write my autobiography, and I insisted I had to do it all myself. I wanted to be the sole author of the book on my life." So to do that, George carries a laptop with him everywhere he goes. He says, quote, "Memories will suddenly come back to me, things I haven't thought about in years. I've been in therapy, but this is so much better. Writing honestly about yourself is the most powerful form of therapy imaginable." Unquote. He hopes to have the book finished by the end of the year. Now, with an AT20 extra, here's George Michael with a hit from 1987, Faith.
Yes, I gotta have faith. I gotta have faith. Because I gotta have faith, the faith, the faith. I gotta have faith, the faith, the faith.
Casey counts them down.